Hello everybody and welcome to retelling lesson number 3. This is the second part of Down the Road. Today we are going to be focusing on retelling the middle and end. Yesterday we did the beginning where we made sure to mention the characters in the setting. And you saw me write that on an anchor chart. I had a big version of the graphic organizer that you're going to be using. And today, because of time, I have already written the middle and end, so we're just going to go over that after we reread and discuss it, okay? Because of the time restraints, I have to make sure that this lesson is around 15 minutes, just so I can meet those, the time limit. So what we're going to do to help that also is to start the book after the beginning already. So yesterday on our anchor chart, we said first there was a girl named Hetty and she lived on a farm. And Mama and Papa wanted fresh eggs for breakfast and Hetty volunteered to go get them from Mr. Birdie's shop all by herself. So we're going to start right after that in the book. So right after Hetty decided, and her mom and dad decided that she was able to go all by herself to Mr. Birdie's. And we're going to reread the middle and end so that we're able to retell it. And sometimes we have to reread books, and that's fine. Go back to the text to help you be able to answer questions or to retell the story. So here she goes. Squeak, bang went the screen door, and Hetty was on her way. She marched straight down the dusty road, swinging the basket and jingling the coins in her pocket. This is what it's like to be a grown-up, she thought. You have money in your pocket and you can go down the road all by yourself. She listened to her shoes go thump, 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 and she made up some walking words to say as she went along. Down the road, 1 and 2, eggs for breakfast, how do you do? Eggs for breakfast, clickety-clack, eggs for breakfast, not a crack. Bump went the basket against Hetty's knee. Bump, bump. When this basket is full of eggs, thought Hetty, I'll walk my smoothest so they won't roll around and break. She practiced walking as if she were skimming across a frozen pond on ice skates. Pretty soon her walk was so smooth that she balanced the wicker basket on her head and climbed all the way to the top of the hill before it even fell off. With the basket over her arm, Hetty raced down the other side, her pigtails flying. She felt inside her pocket to make sure the coins were still there. Then she continued down the road, through a meadow, across a stream, past a house or two, down a street, around a corner, up some steps, and into the cool shadows of Mr. Birdie's Emporium and Dry Goods Store. So she made it there. Well now, said Mr. Birdie, here's Hetty all by herself. Good day, Mr. Birdie, said Hetty, just as Mama would have said. I'd like a dozen eggs, please. She slapped down the coins onto the counter, just as Papa would have done. 12 big beauties, no cracks. Well, Mr. Birdie put 12 big brown eggs into the wicker basket. Hetty walked slowly down a cluttered aisle, looking closely at cans and cartons and bolts of fabric, just as if she might decide to buy something else. Before she left, she remembered to say, Thank you, Mr. Birdie. Around the corner went Hetty, down the street, past a house or two, doing her smooth walk and holding the basket carefully so it wouldn't bump against her knees. When she came to the stream, she stopped with one foot on the fallen log. What if it wobbles, thought Hetty. What if this log wobbles me off and I drop the eggs? She stepped down into the cold water and splashed across the stream, straight across to the other side. No use taking a chance, thought Hetty. So a character trait I'm thinking of, if we're thinking back to next week, would be responsible. She's being very responsible so far. Squish, squish went Hetty's wet shoes on the dusty road. Squish, 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 and Hetty said her walking words. Down the road, 1 and 2, eggs for breakfast, how do you do? Hetty was so busy doing her smooth walk and saying her welcome words and admiring the eggs in the basket that she didn't see a rock sticking up in the middle of the road. She walked along, getting closer to the rock with every step. Eggs for breakfast, clickety-clack. Eggs for breakfast, nah-uh, ouch. Hetty's toe hit the rock and she stumbled forward. She had to hop and jump to keep from falling. Inside the basket, the eggs rattled together with little clinkety sounds. Oh no, said Hetty. She knelt down on the road and took the eggs out of the basket. Scarcely breathing, she examined everyone. Not a crack, she said with a sigh. She wiped each egg off on her shirt and put them back inside. Then she was on her way again, this time keeping a sharp eye out for obstacles on the road. It seemed like a very long road. The sun was hot, and by the time she reached the meadow, Hetty was tired. But there in the middle of the meadow was a big wild apple tree, full of bright red apples, sweet, juicy, crackly, crisp apples. Papa's favorites, Mama's too. Hetty herself was very fond of apples. Just 3, she thought. And then I'll go straight home. She made her way through the weeds, snagging foxtails in her socks and holding the egg basket carefully in front of her. Hetty picked an apple for Mama. She picked an apple for herself. Now for a big, red, Papa-size apple. She reached up, and the wicker basket tipped just a little bit. She reached higher, and the basket tipped a little more. A little more. Well, you could see now. Splat! Hetty wanted to cry, she wanted to hide, she wanted to climb up into the apple tree and never ever come down. She didn't want to go home and tell Papa and Mama there would be no eggs for breakfast. Up she climbed, right up into the old apple tree, as high as she could go, and there she sat, just thinking and feeling sad and not wanting to go home. After a long time, Hetty saw something moving way down the dusty road. It was Papa. Hetty made herself as small as she could. Papa, whose sharp eyes never missed a thing, came striding through the tall meadow grass. So, he said, this is where I find you. Is this how you bring home eggs for breakfast? I was picking apples for us, said Hetty with a sob. I broke the eggs, Papa, every single one. Papa nudged the basket with the toe of his foot. I see, he said, and you climbed up in the tree to think it over? Suddenly his face wrinkled into a smile. There's no finer place than an apple tree to think things over, and Papa climbed up beside her. By the time Mama came through that meadow grass, there were a pile of apple cores underneath the tree. Hetty and Papa had chins sticky with apple juice. Mama nudged the basket with the toe of her shoe. Just look at this. I'm waiting for 12 beautiful eggs. And what do I find? Shells. I'm sorry, Mama, said Hetty. I dropped the eggs. I was trying to pick some apples. Fine, sweet apples, said Papa. Mama stared up into the tree. Well, she said. Just look at the 2 big birds in the apple tree. Papa whistled like a magpie. Tweet, 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 went Hetty. Pretty soon, there were 3 big birds in the apple tree. Mama put her arm around Hetty. I'd almost forgotten how lovely the world looks from a tree, Mama said. Everyone should spend some time in an apple tree, Papa agreed. Absolutely. When they walked back home along the dusty road, they had not one egg among them. But Mama's skirt and Papa's pockets and Hetty's basket were full of sweet red apples. And the next morning, there was apple pie for breakfast. The end. Alrighty, so now we already have the beginning, so now we are thinking about the middle and end. And remember on our chart, it kind of helps us with the little pictures of what is important in the middle. So the middle has the important events in the conflict, and then in the end, it's the resolution and how the character may have changed. So in the middle, I went ahead and I wrote, next, Hetty walked to Mr. Birdie's. Then, when she arrived, she asked for 12 big beauties. On her walk home, she was trying to be careful, but tripped on a rock, but the eggs were okay. As she was walking, she saw an apple tree and decided to pick some apples. When she was picking, her basket tilted over and all the eggs fell out and broke. Hetty was upset, so she climbed up the apple tree and hid. So when I wrote that, I was thinking, what were the major events in the middle of the story? So she was going to Mr. Birdie. She went to Mr. Birdie and she got the eggs. And that's important to know that she was responsible, got there, and got the eggs. Then on her way back, the rock was an important event because it kind of scared Hetty to make sure that she was being extra careful. So then she was even holding the basket in front of her, remember? And looking out for things on the road that might trip her up. After that is when she saw the apple tree. And then she thought maybe I could just get a few apples to enjoy with our eggs for breakfast tomorrow, right? So when she was going to pick the eggs, or pick the apples, she didn't realize that the eggs in the basket were tilting and tilting and tilting until they all broke. So those are important events. That is the conflict in the story. All the eggs broke, right? And that was the whole purpose of her trip, was to go get those 12 big beauties. So now her eggs have broken. She's sad. She feels bad. So what does she do? She climbs up in the tree and kind of hides. But then Papa comes and finds her. So this would be starting the end. So Papa comes to find her. After that, Papa came to look for Hetty and found her in the tree. He was not angry, and he joined her in the tree to eat some apples. Finally, Mama came and found them and climbed up in the tree too. Lastly, they all gathered a bunch of apples and headed home. At the end, they had apple pie instead of eggs for breakfast. So were those the events that happened at the end? Was there a resolution to the story? Yeah. What did they do? They gathered a bunch of apples and decided to make apple pie instead of eggs, right? The problem is that all the eggs broke. So they didn't have any eggs. So what did they decide to do? Pick a bunch of apples. Remember in the book it said Mama's apron was full, Dad's pockets, and even Hetty's basket were full of apples. So the resolution to the conflict is that they picked lots of apples and decided to make apple pie for their meat or their breakfast instead of having those eggs. So I made sure to mention that in the end of the story of my graphic organizer. So I use transition words like after that, finally, lastly. So those are all important things to do, remember, when we're retelling a story. So I hope that this helped model what you're going to do and review retelling and the important things that we need to mention when we are retelling. So let me know how you like this story. I thought it was a cute story. I've always read this teaching first grade. It's a good little story about being responsible, and when some things happen, how it's not always a bad thing. We can always fix our problems, find a resolution to some of those things that happen, just like with Hetty and the eggs. And they just decided to have apples instead, and that was fine. So I hope that this helped you. If you want to respond with maybe a connection you have to this story, did this remind you of anything? Or what was your favorite part in the story? And why was that your favorite part? My favorite part in the story was when they all climbed the apple tree and they were all in there as a family eating apples and looking at the world from up in the tree. Because I can remember doing that when I was little. I had an apple tree in my yard and I always climbed and ate the apples off there. So that's also kind of like a connection, and that's why it's my favorite part. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this story. It's one of my favorites, and I will see you next time.